I'm listening. I'm not trying to talk over you.
No, I don't know, Michelle. When I hear you characterize the church itself as the abuser in this situation with people who are hurting, that's really difficult for me, because what ends up happening is people say it's the doctrines of the church, and rather than people who are not living the doctrines of the church, they mischaracterize that as what's actually the problem, when that's not the case.
Right.
And then
so
we end up
Well,
misdiagnosing things in a way that screws up all the people who are feeling hurt aren't able to access the atonement and actually be healed. We say, yeah, you're hurting, and let's keep on hurting and hurting and hurting and hurting, because we're never going to access the atonement, and we're never actually going to take the power that the atonement can have to heal you in your life and your relationships and everything, because we are so stuck on the pain itself that we can't look for the solution.
Yes, but they always ask the orthodox side to be nice. We never ever do we get through the progressive or ex-Mormon side any kind of sympathy or kindness.
I want to clarify that I wasn't intending to call out Jacob Hansen for his treatment of Julie Hanks.
See, I was hoping you were, and I'm going to edit out any of these nice things you're going to say about him later.
I wish there were more Jacob Hansens. I would have loved to have been in a ward with 100 Jacob Hansens, because at least those are the people that were trying to fight on my behalf from the mob.
It's too easy for people to turn things into bombs that aren't.
Jacob Hansen accuses Julie Hanks of leading people out of the church. I strongly disagree with that.
Gosh, she's so beautiful! Go, my God! She's very, very pretty. So now I'll criticize her.
It's not. I'll go on with like the guys we're talking about today. My cousin Hayden Carroll and Jacob Hansen.
Yeah, we have to stick to one controversy.
Cousin, it's so good.
It's all connected.
It's bizarre.
So we're gonna start the show because we're saving it for the show, and we're gonna start. Okay, so welcome to Midnight Mormons.
That was the most slurred Midnight Mormons you've ever said.
We're sober here, we promise. Welcome to Midnight Mormons. We got Michelle Stone back in the studio who wanted to come back on and air a grievance.
You asked me to come back on. Don't blame me.
I will always ask you to come back on, Michelle. Okay, but just don't embarrass me on my own show like that. Okay,
I agree to your request.
So, yeah, but you see, you're sneaky about it. The girls are always sneaky about it. You sent me a text. You said, I'd be willing to come on, which made me say that, yes, I want you to come on, which made you say, now I'm on, but you asked me. It's like when the women dropped the handkerchief in the 17th century. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, my lady, your handkerchief back. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, that's neither here nor there. You got a beef with one guest on our show, Jacob Hansen, and his buddy, Hayden Carroll, about some things they said about your friend.
And Hayden Carroll is your cousin, you're saying?
Oh, this just got so weird so fast.
How did it get weird?
No, okay. So yeah, you sent me the link and asked me what I thought of the show, and I told you I did not like what I was seeing. I hadn't been aware of Jacob Hansen's videos.
Okay.
So I went ahead and watched them and told you I didn't love it. And you said, hey, come on and talk about it. So let's just get that clear. Carden, you asked me out.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. Now you're definitely getting called in.
So
hit it. Air your grievance. What's going on?
Okay. So I thought you'd ask me questions. So, okay. So watching through the Jacob Hansen videos, have you guys watched them all? Have you guys all watched them?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it was this weird, super weird conglomeration of events coming together because so Hayden Carroll is my cousin's son, but I've never met him, but he started kind of like talking to me, but kind of in the way to come after me a little bit. It felt weird, you know? And so I was aware of that. I had no idea who Jacob Hansen was. So it was bizarre to see that they were together and that Jacob Hansen was going over Julie Hanks, who I've never met and haven't necessarily been a follower of. I've seen some of her stuff pop up, but as soon as I watched the videos, I was like, oh, this is gross. I don't like this at all. So yes, I will.
So what's your beef? Just hit it.
What's your beef? First of all, well, there are so many things, but so the whole energy, the whole approach of this is completely, I think, lacking any sense of compassion or understanding. They're going after Julie Hanks and like bludgeoning her with talks, trying to paint her as an apostate without making any effort to understand what issues she's talking to, what things she's addressing, and what struggles and pain she is ministering to, right?
Okay.
So I'm just doing a monologue here. Okay, I'll just keep going.
Just hit it. Well, we'll play devil's advocate later, but we want you to air your grievance.
We want to hear you out, hear what you have to say without like interrupting.
That's what we do. We're so sensitive here. We just want to listen. So
then I'll keep talking. So anyway, listening to them, first of all, I want to say that when you listen to General Conference through the perspective of telling other people how it is and listening for, I can go after them. That is the definition of self-righteousness. I find that to be so distasteful. All of us have room for our own growth and our own repentance, right? So I personally hate it when people use conference, like snippets from conference talks, let alone going back decades to find snippets to bludgeon people over the head and prove that they're wrong because you've got an authority on your side. I think that if we don't want to, it's just so unlikable and so self-righteous. And so Jacob Hansen accuses Julie Hanks of leading people out of the church. I strongly disagree with that. It's this energy, this understanding of the gospel that's this, like, who is the great accuser? It's not Jesus, right? It's Lucifer, it's Satan. In Revelation, I can't remember the verse right now, Revelation 13 something. It's Satan that's the great accuser. When we sit and point fingers at other people and say everything they're doing wrong, that is not the spirit of Jesus Christ. That is not the gospel
like
of
the
Jesus
woke
Christ.
scolds and the progmos. So are you suggesting
or the self-righteous
Pharisees.
Mormons or the self-righteous Christians?
Okay, so I just want to make sure that I understand, because my buddy Jonathan Streeter and my friend Brad Whitbeck are teaching me how to be a better listener and how to use active listening skills. So I need to restate your position back to you to make sure we understanding. So if I understand you correctly, you think Jacob Hansen is a big self-righteous and no, I just I totally get it.
Way to put words in her mouth.
No, I totally
just make it so much worse than what she said.
No, I just get it. So you think Jacob Hansen is being a little sanctimonious and self-righteous in his videos, quote, against the ideas of one Dr. Julie Hanks. Do I understand you correctly?
Yes, I would say this.
Okay.
Sorry, I've got to get my thoughts in order. As I told you, I'm extremely sleep deprived.
It's okay.
It's okay.
Jacob Hansen's approach to the gospel, it seems to me, is pretty much the exact opposite of the gospel as I understand it. So Jesus Christ is the minister, right? He's the healer. He goes in and sees the one and sees the pain. And instead of accusing and pointing his finger, he gets in there and heals and ministers. What I see is that whether or not I agree completely with Julie Hanks' approach, they're both JH initials. It's confusing.
Yeah.
Whether or not I agree completely with her approach, I think she is doing her best to minister to pain and struggle that I really resonate with. And so much of her message, even though maybe I would state some parts of it differently, really resonates strongly with me. But he can't even take the time to get in and see what the struggle is and see why people are leaving and why her message is resonating with them. He's just going after her. So a couple of the examples is when the Savior heals the man on the Sabbath with his withered hand. Remember this story?
Yeah, totally.
And the Pharisees are so busy pointing out that the Savior is doing it wrong, that he's breaking the rules, that they cannot have any room to even care about the man with his hand or to see his suffering. They're certainly not offering healing or help. They're just, he's doing it wrong. He doesn't get to be one of us. He's doing it wrong. They can't even rejoice in the healing or have any room for the compassion. That's what I see. In fact, just today, as I was thinking about this, I had a great insight that I'll share with you. Like the story from that Jesus shares in the Sermon on the Mount about the beam and the mote, right?
Yeah.
You have a beam in your eye and you're trying to pick the mote out of the other person's eye. And all of a sudden I saw that on a deeper level where I think it applies directly in this case. You have a beam in your eye, which means you're completely unable to see the situation. You can't even see the struggle, see the pain that is there. And so you're just going after someone that's trying to help with the pain, and you can't even see it. And if you can first take the beam out of your eye by diving in and going, what are the struggles people are having that make them want to listen to someone like Julie Hanks? Get in there, understand it. And then if you see flaws in her method, then you can offer you could say, hey, Julie, let me build on what you're saying. And I think that's removing the moat, saying, hey, you're at least seeing the same thing. And you're saying, I think there's a little bit of a flaw. Quake.
I had to make a silly face because I know you talk for a long time. And I know that as I have a mother who had a lot of kids, and that's the only way we can get her to stop is I go like, so
you asked me to come on your show.
Hey, you used your mom Jedi mind tricks on us. We're using our kid Jedi mind tricks on you.
Okay.
Here's my thought here, because I didn't talk at all in the last episode, right?
Yeah.
So my thought is this: I understand what you're saying, and it does make sense, because for example, you're not supposed to pick flowers on the Sabbath, and Christ picked flowers on the Sabbath. He broke some of those rules, but they are for the greater good of nurturing to the human soul. So, in this example you gave, Julie Hanks is ministering to those with withered hearts, but Jacob Hansen is the learned scholars pointing his finger going, you are breaking the rules, you're doing it wrong, and he's focused on the fact that maybe the exact interpretation of orthodoxy he's used to is not being followed, but she is helping other people. Now, the question is, the rejoicing in the helping of other people. This is, I think, where the actual debate is. Mm-hmm. Because if the thought is that Julie Hanks' advocacy or her media leads people out of the church, Christ would never leave people out of the faith. He would never reach out to the withered hand to make them leave Israel. So the question is her method the method that Christ would follow, or is it just a method of secular kindness that may point people away from covenants?
I wouldn't say kindness. I'd say secular
I said kindness.
Protest or advocacy.
I know. I'm saying secular kindness.
Okay, cool.
Away from the gospel, because I frequent Twitter. I do think that sometimes she gets dogged on and it's unfair. Like, I'll see people that's like, all right, honestly, you're jumping on the bandwagon here because you want to be a bull and you want to get some likes, and you're being caned right now by trying to profit off the misery of others.
Yeah, there's grifters on all sides.
Yeah.
So,
however, like the Love is Advocacy post, there's a lot of things. I got friends in Houston that do a lot of drugs, and I'm the judgy Mormon friend of theirs. But you know what? I love them. I will not advocate that they do drugs. I will not advocate that they do, so sometimes the quick little phrases she puts out can be like, that can be damaging, especially when done perhaps in reaction to something an apostle has said. So
what weird face do I need to pull to let
No, I'm done now. I'm done now.
Done.
I do want to get you new headphones because you're using 2002 headphones right there. What are you doing?
Oh, great.
It's true. So,
okay.
So I agree. I'm like the punching bag today.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just because we like you. You're officially initiated. Michelle Stone is officially initiated. You know what I'm saying? So, and besides, you said I stood you up, so I'm still like recovering. My ego's still recovering from that.
Your ego. Okay, everyone, Carden Ellis stood me up. Stood me up so bad for like 5 hours. Stood me up. And, you're lucky I stuck around.
Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. So tell them the story.
So,
tell us, give your rebuttal.
So I think that everybody, let me say it this way. Second Nephi tells us not to dig a pit up for our neighbor because of their words, right? I think that my guess is that if Elder Holland could have a redo on that talk after he realized how it would land for many people, he would probably want one. At least I kind of hope he would want one. I think that Julie Hanks, maybe her like just instinctive reaction, maybe she would want to redo. My approach is to try to hear people's intentions in the larger picture of the context of everything they say, and try to give them a little bit of space, because these are painful, difficult, really hard issues, and not everyone's going to do it perfectly every time.
Yeah, and you know, to your credit, what you're saying here, I do feel like Julie Hanks and Jacob Hansen speak very different languages. If that
they are extremely different people.
Yes, and so I feel like what you're saying here, like take a moment to try to understand one another, right? I feel like when at some points what Jacob Hansen is hearing, when he's hearing what Julie Hanks has to say, when I'm looking at the episodes that they did and I'm looking at the things she said and the problems that they had with her, I can see why they had the problems that they had with her, but I can also maybe construe a way that what she said works, you know? It takes a little bit of extra work to try to say, okay, maybe I can see how what she's saying works within a certain context, and maybe that's what she was thinking, you know? And so taking the time to try to figure out, hey, where do we go and how do we understand each other first before we start like slinging stones at each other, and we're not even talking about the same thing, right? I worry that might be a little bit of what's happening here. I know that in their episodes they mentioned her not coming onto their show, and I feel like if she just talked with them, maybe they could get on the same page, maybe? Or do you think that would be a good solution, or what?
I hope she won't go on their show. I don't think that she should give them it's hard. I'm trying to give Jacob Hansen the benefit of the doubt that his motives
What
are
do you
good,
say to the people that say Michelle Stone speaks lies about no polygamy, and I hope you wouldn't have her on your show?
No, that's not why. That's not why. I think that it's hard to know.
Silencing somebody is a pretty draconian response to disagreeing with their opinion.
No, I'm not saying to silence them. I'm saying that he named his podcast Thoughtful Faith when there was a very well-known group called A Thoughtful Faith. It seems like he wants to be relevant, and it's hard for me to know.
Was there like
is that a well-known group? I've never heard of this.
Yeah, is there like some punk band called The Thoughtful Faith?
Yeah, it's one of the Mormon Stories group. They had a podcast for a long time called
good. Take anything away from Delin. I got no problem with that, okay?
Sorry, I've never heard of that group. I didn't know.
For a long time, it was quite lovely because it was for people that were staying in but were kind of in the struggle.
Is it still up and running, or?
Oh, I don't know, but it's hard for me to believe. Anyway, also, it's hard for me to believe that he's not at least just a little bit trying to ride Julie Hanks' coattails to greater relevance by going after her with 15 videos all aimed at her.
So was it 15?
It was 7.
I thought it was 7.
It was 7.
I was like, I missed some of these. Okay.
Well, I don't know.
It's a lot. It feels like a lot.
Well, Michelle, if I may, I want to ask you about this. Now, I know you are not Dr. Julie Hanks, okay?
And I love how we've got 2 people on trial that are not part of this podcast.
Neither are represented.
Neither one of them are representative. This is non habeas corpus right here.
So let me just say this before I get critical. I'm going to say a couple good things about Julie Hanks before I say anything critical, because I think, what does Doctrine and Covenants say? You know, before you're all supposed to... I don't even have the quote, but I have it like kind of in the back of my head, okay?
Go privily between the 2 of you. It does say that. They could have contacted her privily. And
I think they did.
Way, but go ahead.
Well,
and by the way, I haven't even chimed in yet, so hold that thought, Michelle.
Okay, here's the first thing I'll say. 1, she's incredibly intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, she's
Definitely.
very, very smart. And she is also very, very great at marketing herself, because a lot of very creative people are very bad at marketing. She understands aesthetics. She understands lighting. She understands color schemes. So she's a great marketer. And, I mean, she's a therapist, so she actually, she knows what she's doing. Also, she's very beautiful. I'll say that. Yeah. As opposed to saying, have you seen her? Oh, my gosh, she's so beautiful. Go, my goodness. She's very, very pretty. So now I'll criticize her. Nails? Come on, what are you doing? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, here's a criticism. It's this post right here. Purity culture says women are responsible for men's thoughts. Dr. Julie Hanks.
No, they're not.
Okay, so it's just right there. Oh. That's the post on Instagram.
It's well designed.
Now, again, I recognize you are not her, nor are you her apologist, but I want to use that as an example of, when you use phrases like purity culture, because when I hear purity culture and you hear purity culture, we may not hear the same thing. Because it's
a
2022.
Progressive dog whistle that's a straw man of the church, and I'm tired of people doing that.
Well, it's used in evangelical culture and stuff as well. But
the thing I want to say is, even though you're saying it's a progressive dog whistle card, I don't know if she's necessarily using it in that way, right? To her, it could mean something very specific. I think there's a lot of these things that I see on her timeline that I'm like, what is she saying here? Is she speaking out of both sides of her mouth, or and being purposely vague to do a dog whistle, or does she actually have a meaning that she's trying to say that I'm not getting because I'm just coming at it from a different context?
And
right?
That's exactly the point I wanted to make, is that if when you use a phrase like that, but then which is a rather vague phrase that a conservative MAGA Mormon and a liberal Faith Matters Mormon are going to have different interpretations of, when you follow it up with means, women responsible for men's thoughts, like that in and of itself is 900 comments of arguing, right? That is automatically a boom. This is the argument. So when people like Jacob Hansen do create these videos, it's like he's not some obsessive stalker like, I can't wait to take down Julie. But it does seem like she's inviting a lot of this dialogue and disagreement, because she's using fast quips that are kind of controversial. And I mean, nobody's immune from criticism. So to me, it's like, I get that maybe 7 videos could have been a lot, but
especially in a row.
Yes, in a row. Little weird. But so it's just weird. It's like, look, Julie, she is in a way inviting this debate, and I'm not saying she deserves to be harassed or anything, but when you post that, you have opened the door and you said, all right, let the fight begin. There's no way she didn't know.
Okay, so I'm totally hearing you. Let me just back. So I'm not even on Twitter, so I haven't been a follower of hers. But as I've dived in and listened to her message, I'd rather focus on kind of the core of what she's talking about rather than the peripheral details, because I think there's more substance there.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that one of her core points is what she calls personal authority, what I would call personal autonomy. And I think that is an essential truth that people need to develop within themselves. But
isn't the nature of the gospel personal authority and the understanding of agency? I mean, this is one of our oldest myths, is the war in heaven. And that the war in heaven was an argument over personal authority versus communal responsibility. I mean, the essence of agency is personal authority.
So you're saying you approve of personal authority, or what are you saying, Cardin?
Well, I'm thinking I want to know how the other person is defining it before I say that I espouse their definition. I've been trying to speak last on this, but I guess I might as well have to jump in right now. Sometimes I think the criticisms of Julie Hanks are a little bit unfair, because I think she's speaking more to the concept of operating from a point that you are convinced of something and not doing something unless you're convinced and you feel in your core that you should do it and that it is good. Nobody should be coerced into anything, or else you then have a violation of what the godly meaning of free agency is. That was the essence of the war in heaven. Satan wanted to make everybody choose the right path. So we all came back to heaven, and he said, the glory will be mine. Jesus Christ said, no, they got to choose for themselves. So we know who wants to be here and who doesn't, and the glory will be thine. Okay. So sometimes when she makes these personal authority arguments, especially about things like, you shouldn't do something just because the brethren said so, I think she's speaking more to the importance of not doing things you are not personally have a personal conviction of. And that grates on the people who feel like our society has disrespected priesthood authority, disrespected institutional strength, and has disrespected, frankly, the rule of law altogether. And they see that as an erosion of the importance of understanding priesthood authority, understanding familial authority, so on and so forth. So when these guys get angry over here about what she said, and these people over here get angry about what they said, I think sometimes you have two sides that are talking past each other, okay? Now, with that said, okay, I give her grace in those scenarios. I do not approach Julie Hanks from the position that she's stupid. I approach her from the position that she's smart. I think she's smart enough to know that this is what she's doing. And if her interest were in building the kingdom, helping the unrepresented achieve better representation in the mainstream, while simultaneously helping the mainstream understand the unrepresented. If she really wanted to be an Apostle Paul between the Gentiles and the Jews and be a bridge builder, she would do everything she could to maintain the integrity of that bridge. However, I only ever see her strongest criticisms reserved for the priesthood authorities of our church, while she turns around and defends people like John DeLynn as, oh, he's not even an anti-Mormon. If you can't call a spade, I question how an intelligent person could not recognize that. And if I know you're intelligent, which I know you are, and then you're saying things that could only be explained by unintelligence or advocacy, it makes me think that you're more of an advocate instead of a bridge builder. And hold on a second. Okay. The other thing is, I do have a problem with, as Kwaku said, the vagaries. Intelligent people know not to say something blatantly against the church in a single post. And there's no single post that we can pull up that says, oh, that's really bad. I take issue with her love is advocacy. Yet I see the counter argument for that you could use. But when you take a bird's eye view of her Instagram profile at large, as Kwaku said, the very well-designed one with its pretty colors and all kinds of great selfies on it, you quickly notice there is no criticisms of secular society in there. There is no vocalization of how secularism does damage to gay members of the church. There is no vocalization of all the horrible things that the LGBTQ lobby is doing to actually tank our birth rate and cause division amongst good families that are led by men who are wholly decent in every way. There's literally zero criticism of that side of the argument that is supposedly supposed to be two-sided, because aren't we in this to start conversations? Her only criticisms seem double-barrel shotgun pointed straight at the brethren of the church. And when you take that, that bird's eye view, I can see why somebody says, I don't think she's operating in good faith to build a bridge. I think she's an advocate for secularism into the church. And that's rule number one of progmos. Rule number one, they're advocates for progressivism into Mormonism, not Mormonism into progressivism. Number two, okay, they think secularism has it right. That their PhD means more than the apostleship of so-and-so or the prophetic authority of so-and-so, that the secular kids are the cool kids and I want to change the church to be more secular instead of change secularism to be more godly. And then third, all right, is just they only ever accuse you of that which they are guilty of themselves. And there's always a lack of engagement. If she wanted to build bridges, I think there's enough people that have thrown red flags saying, hey, hold on a second, I could see how this is misconstrued. That if she wanted to build bridges, she would clarify. And I don't see her clarifying. I've had 7 people that are friends of hers, that are mutual friends of ours, give her my number. And she said multiple times, supposedly, that we're going to talk and all this other stuff, whatever, you know what I'm saying? But that is yet to happen. And what I've noticed is people like you that I think are honest seekers will engage. People that don't engage, I'm dubious of. Because it means that there's another motive out there, whether it's selling merch or else trying to propagate a narrative. I don't know what. I'm not here to judge that because I don't know yet. But there's enough evidence here of people that have had concerns about it that I have concerns. And the last thing is, I do think you have to be careful about the LGBTQ argument. Because don't forget, she operates out of predominantly Utah audiences, and that's fine, and it's different there. But they're building a Planned Parenthood at my son's high school. And we just passed a law that a 15-year-old can run away from Utah and begin on our tax dollar dimes without the parent's knowledge or consent. That is terrifying if you are a parent who has a child who is already living in a hyper-sexualized and hyper-politicized and hyper-advocacied, whatever the word is, society. And when you come out, you say, oh, no, Brother Holland, love is advocacy. I'm sorry, Julie Hanks, do I need to advocate for the building of Planned Parenthoods in public high schools that my children will attend, where my daughter at 15 can go start the paperwork without my knowledge or consent for an abortion, while she can't go tanning for prom without a note from me until she's 18 years old? Hold on a second. Are you going to hold my humanity as a good father and not a toxic patriarch? Are you going to hold my humanity hostage until I advocate for that Planned Parenthood? No, there's two sides to advocacy, girlfriend. So I suggest you clarify, because there's 50% of this argument that sees a problem with that, while the problem was like, yeah, you go, girl, boss. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I can see why people think dubiously of this woman, and she's intelligent enough to know that people are thinking this. And if she wanted to build bridges, she would come out and clarify.
That was a lot. Okay.
That's all I got to say. I'm done this whole podcast.
Can I respond?
Yes, you can.
So my focus, my focus isn't primarily to defend everything Julie Hanks says. My focus is looking more at the Jacob Hansen energy and what that does to the church and what a false version of the gospel I believe that to be.
Okay.
For what I understand, I will say this about Julie Hansen, or Julie Hanks. I'm sorry. See,
she hated that. It's okay. She hated that.
I need a lot more sleep. So when you are dealing with situations where you have a couple that is experiencing intense pain because he is struggling with pornography and she is filled with fear and accusation and blame, and the teachings of the church have made that situation more fraught, more intense. When you are dealing with a situation where you have a family where one of the children is gay or maybe trans, and then you have, one of the in-laws that says the proclamation on the family, I'm not going to have my children around that sibling. So we're using the proclamation on the family as an excuse to destroy and break up families. When you have situations where I will say women, because that's who I relate to, and I think it's more common here, where women feel like they have to run themselves into utter exhaustion to somehow measure up, to be enough, to be well enough thought of. Like on and on and on. We have all of these situations. And when you are sitting with people, trying to help them find their way through, trying to work with them and minister to them, even if you're not, like I said, I would do it a little bit differently than Julie Hanks is. My approach, I really get a lot of what she's saying. I would add a little bit to it. I would clarify the mote and let her clarify my mote, right? When you are sitting in that and you see something said that, like, you're in the hospital caring for all these patients, and all of a sudden a bomb is launched on your hospital. It's really hard. And sometimes that's what it feels like with things said by the church leaders. And please don't ever put me in a position of having to defend the other side. I think that we have a war going on. And my whole thing is, hey, it'd be great if we could stop launching nuclear weapons at each other. That would be great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's stick with bunker busters. You know what I'm saying?
Or you know what? I feel like it's so easy to become bloodthirsty, like the Nephites and Lamanites in the Book of Mormon. Like, well, they did this to us, so we're going to do this to them. So we're going to, and
that's
like
not
the
what we should
Elder
do.
Holland. What did you say?
And that's not what we should be doing. Yeah.
Right. And so for me, I look at the messages that Julie Hanks is giving, and I can see where I think, oh, I would say that, I would clarify that, I would add to that, right? But I look at what Jacob Hansen is doing, and I look at the fact that both of those guys on that podcast claim that they've been in bishoprics. And I will say this, all of them, all of you, and most of their listeners and your listeners with the comments we're getting, can and will be called into positions of church leadership, bishops, stake presidents, whatever else.
I don't think I'm ever getting there.
Well, those two already have been. With all of the cumulative wisdom, understanding, gospel knowledge, inspiration, compassion that I, Julie Hanks, or any other woman in our lives will accumulate, we will never be judges in Israel. We will never be the ministers of a flock. And so if we want to claim that women are equally represented in this church, it is incumbent upon those guys to not just criticize and condemn and lambaste and bludgeon Julie Hanks, but to get in and go, what are the struggles?
And to be better
Why
listeners.
are people resonating with her message?
So,
and I'll tell you, their approach is what's leading people out of the church. It's their approach that makes you go, if that's who Mormons are, they can have the church. I'm out. And they said repeatedly, like, sorry, you don't like it? Go. You can go join one of these other, like they're freely saying, leave the church. If you don't think exactly like us, there's no room for you here. See, I focus on polygamy. And one of the problems we have in polygamy in our heritage is that women, their experiences, their desires, their feelings, their pain, their input, all of that doesn't matter. It has to be invisible. It's silent. That's what we come from. And so when I see it playing out again, when you have a prominent LDS woman who is speaking to it, which she has this following, obviously there is a need there that she is filling, right? And instead of going, why, what is the pain that's causing her to have this resonance with people? They're just saying, no, it doesn't matter. You don't get to have personal autonomy, personal authority. You have to do what we say you have to do. And I've had enough experience to know how absolutely essential personal autonomy is.
Sorry.
Okay, so Brad wants to say something, then Quaker wants to say something, then I got to say something. So Brad.
Okay, because I really appreciate everything that you've just said, Michelle. And I think that it's really important to consider, and it's very helpful to help people contextualize how they're listening to one another. I wanted to say something with what you've said and what Carden was saying about assuming Julie Hanks is smart and she's doing X, that she should be bridge building is kind of what you were saying. You think that she might be doing it wrong. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I think, like you were talking about just now, Michelle, she is looking at it not from the position of a bridge builder, but as somebody looking at it as the position of like a shepherd looking at the flock of the people that she sees as in pain, right? So when she's not talking about building bridges, I think in her mind, she's thinking about, hey, how do I help these people who I see and think are in pain? And she's a therapist. She's going to be
totally fine.
Let me finish.
Then say it. Okay.
It would be a lot easier if you weren't talking for me to say it. But so she's looking at this from the position of a therapist and trying to help the people that she sees as like her patients, right? So she's looking at these people who she sees as in pain, and I don't think she's necessarily thinking that building the bridge is the right course of action, even though it might actually be. I think that maybe could be a more effective way, like you're talking about, like you outlined in what you were speaking about. It may actually be a more effective way to help ensure that she's helping them in a way that doesn't lead them out of the church, because that is the thing that is the core issue for Jacob Hansen, right? Is whether or not Julie Hanks's material is leading people out of the church. And
please hear let me just add this in.
Yeah.
From my perspective, it is Jacob Hansen's material that is leading people
and
out
there
of the
could
church,
be
because
elements
it is saying
of both.
There's not space for you here.
Now, hold on a second, though. I have a family member that will remain nameless, but all of my family knows who it is. Convinced 3 women in her ward, to cheat on their husbands. 3 women, including our ex-bishop's wife. There are 3 broken families now because this woman, quoting John DeLynn and Julie Hanks all the way, said, women are led by a patriarchy. All of these old white men are telling us what to do. Well, men are pigs, so women can be pigs too. And you exercise your girl power, okay, that sacred girl power and personal authority and personal autonomy, by taking your sexuality back. And so these women went out, they cheated on their husbands. There's 3 brutally broken families now, okay, all in one ward. We think there's a 4th, okay. And the whole time she's quoting Julie Hanks along the way, donating to John DeLynn and Mormon Stories. So when I see Julie Hanks say, John DeLynn is not an anti-Mormon, as one of Jacob Hansen's videos, he's just a mental health professional.
Hey,
and then
Craig,
I see, hold on, I see my aunt. Well, you're saying there's a lot of hurt on this side because of what the church does. And I'm showing you a direct example in my family of 4 broken families that have been quoting her along the way, the whole entire place.
Okay, but I gotta say,
it's a two-way street.
That's just like the people do when they pull out Under the Banner of Heaven and the Laffertys and blame that on Joseph Smith. You're saying somehow this woman, your relative, was powerful enough to go convince 3 other women. I mean, where are those women's souls and centers? They obviously had issues. Maybe there was things, and she was counseling with them in their issues. I don't know. That's a, third-hand story. But I think it would be impossible for me to go convince people to cheat on their husbands. And if people are
give yourself more credit. Give yourself more credit.
I'm hoping desperately that I can help people get information that polygamy is not true. I'm trying to do that, but that's a far cry from cheating on your husband. And I only can be effective on people who are open anyway. So the point I'm trying to make is you have an interesting relative. There were some affairs. And somehow that's all Julie Hanks' fault.
No, I never said it's all her fault. I'm saying
people
can
take people's teachings and use them and twist them. But if you're saying that it's personal autonomy that is the problem, so I did record. I recorded a podcast on this that's going to be posted on Sunday, which will be what I don't know when this will air, so it might have already aired. But I think that the approach that we need to look at the atonement is really the issue here. Is this a works-based gospel or a grace-based gospel? And do we have an external locus of control where we think there are authorities that tell us what to do? Or do we believe what the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Bible all teach repeatedly, that it is the light of Christ and the Spirit of God inside each one of us that should be our authority, that should be how we learn truth, how we gain direction?
Well, Cardin, I got it. I'm going to... Here's what I... Okay, so...
Can I just finish my one thought and then I'll just be done?
Well, you said the last time.
Okay, well, yeah. But this is one cohesive thought.
Okay.
Michelle Stone accused Jacob Hansen and Hayden Carroll of basically unrighteous dominion. That these 2 priesthood holders that can be in bishoprics and will hold leadership positions in the church are exercising unrighteous dominion. Would you say that is a fair categorization of your argument, Michelle?
No, I haven't said that. I have...
Or that they're misrepresenting her, or that they're attacking her in a way that's
they don't have dominion over her. They don't, I think that the way that they approach the gospel does damage. It does damage to the body of the Christ to say, foot, I have no need.
Would you say that from their position of influence, they're incorrectly misrepresenting somebody and causing unnecessary harm to people due to that division? Is that fair?
I don't know. I think that I think that when you talk about people without compassion, you make situations in families worse.
Okay, but you're assuming that they're operating without compassion, because sometimes I view it's compassionate to disabuse somebody of a bad narrative. If somebody's been told they're not welcome at church because they're gay or they're trans or they're bisexual or whatever, and that their congregation is wholly incapable of viewing them as a child of God first, and then as a gay person second, and that they will be hated the second they walk in the front door, I see that massive false narrative perpetuated online towards children who are discovering their sexuality as being just as corrosive as the errantly homophobic people that you may find at church. And if one side of the argument cannot take responsibility for that, I view it as an unfair argument. And we cannot say that Jacob Hansen is exercising unrighteous authority or is incorrectly representing the other side of the argument if that other side will not recognize what they do too.
Okay, I hear you. I can see problems in both sides. For example, the horrible things that happened in November 2017. That was a big nuclear bomb dropped in the middle of the church and in relationships, when there was that policy of what's called the policy of exclusion.
And who was that titled by? And who was that called?
I want to say,
why is it called the POX? Who called it the policy of exclusion? Was that the church?
Okay. So I see that what the church leaders did was extremely, in my opinion, hurtful and destructive, and it's now been undone. But I also see releasing it and revealing it also caused a lot of pain. I wish that there had been, I don't know what it's hard to tell. I see both sides as complicit in that, in whatever pain damage was done. I wish the church hadn't done it. I also wish it hadn't been released.
Okay.
So right? I've been holding my tongue here for a bit. Yeah. So I'm the former president of BYU Democrats. Okay. I'm politically unaffiliated. I don't trust the whole aid of the system. But I was the head of BYU Democrats. And what I discovered when I was the head of BYU Democrats was that the wave of liberal Mormonism was prevalent at BYU, and it was heavy in the club, and it was a little bit my fault. But I watched liberal Mormon students at BYU enact the worst kind of bullying and social media borderline emotional terrorism out of anything I've ever seen before. I did not see the Republican students at BYU do that. Even the Desnat meme weird trad account people did not come close. Okay, good that you don't know that is. But those were watching.
Count yourself lucky.
I saw the heads of BYU Democrats and their associates file false police reports about people. I saw them file false Title IX reports about those they disagreed with so they could publicly embarrass them. I saw them get people fired from jobs. I saw them create text messages to get other students to try to commit the S word. I saw horrible, horrible things, okay, coming from the left wing of the church and specifically the student body. And the entire time when they talked about the gospel, they pushed the exact same message that Julie Hanks pushes. They pushed the love, inclusion, accept your LGBT brothers and sisters. As a man in the church, you don't know what it's like. As a man in the church, you don't know what it's like to be a woman. While at the same time, all I could see was the carnage of destruction that they were doing to their other students. So I can see where Jacob Hansen's coming from here. Why someone would be so angry and so upset, because after 5, 6, 7 years of poking the bear and punching someone while you're holding up a mirror to show you that you're crying yourself, I'm hurting, attack, I'm actually the one hurting. People finally get sick of it, and then the bear bites back. And what we're seeing with people like Jacob Hansen and Hayden Carroll and Quick Media, and you're seeing these men in the church come out and say, I'm fighting back. I hate what I'm seeing. I think these people, I'm not saying they think this about Julie Hanks, but a lot of on the left wing theological side, people are saying, I think these people are evil because of what I've seen them do and what I've seen the same people pushing those narratives do to other people. So in defense of Jacob Hansen, I don't trust any liberal Mormon thing ever, because I've seen what that side does that I've never seen the conservative Mormon side ever do. I've never. So in defense of him, I can see where he's coming from. You know what I mean?
I'll throw him under the bus in a second, though. We'll commiserate after this, Michelle.
Yeah.
So Michelle, and then the conversation pillow. You're a mother. You use the conversation pillow. Then it's going to Brad. So you first, Michelle.
I've never heard of a conversation pillow. What is that?
What is that?
I haven't either.
Wait, you never use the
What's
conversation
a pillow, Carden?
Oh, it's the pillow.
I have the conversation pillow.
Okay.
Okay. So, first of all, I understand what you're saying, that eventually people get bloodthirsty. Everything that right now is happening from Quaco, what you said, that they were sick of it, and so now they're fighting back. What they are doing is giving complete ammunition to the other side. The other side is now able to point and say, see, we were right about all of it. That's what it is. That is what they are providing for them, right? It's like it's not wise. It's not helping.
So should we just sit back and take it?
It's doing the opposite of helping.
Because that's the schoolyard bully who finally gets hit back, and then the bully goes, "See, I always told you this guy sucked." Like, it's kind of like, look, they're like predatory psychiatrists. They push you to the edge, and then finally you get upset. Yeah. They go, "This is why you need meds." You know.
So I hear what you're saying. I want to say also. So first of all, I think that what they are doing is very counterproductive. if that's what they're trying to do.
But be specific. What they're doing? Like, all I saw, I'll be honest with you, if Jacob Hansen is guilty of anything in his videos, it's of being boring. I honestly haven't finished a single one.
No, he is. It's this like really, really gross captain of the high school debate club energy where I'm going to win the argument. And like I said before, I've raised that kid, and sitting around the dinner table, and you're like, you are not helping. All they want to do is win the fight, win the argument, and they'll just go to anything and accuse and accuse and accuse and not really try to listen, not try to understand. Luckily, my kids grew out of that with help. I'm sad to
which
see
one your
it's
kids do
still
you
being
dislike
in
the
that
most?
energy.
Which is your least favorite kid?
Oh, Quickie was just making a joke saying,
he was
which
making
of your
a joke.
kids do you dislike the most?
Yeah, and did they have to sit on the repentant steps?
But I promise you that, like, as a parent, I believe God as a parent does not like it when we all sit and fault find and point and so if I hear what you're saying about them, about us on our side feeling pushed and pushed and pushed. Our side, their side, whatever, the more conservative feeling pushed. I have been the victim of that as well. I posted a video of my girls and we were talking about navigating LGBT things. I shared it in a Facebook group of LDS parents of LGBT kids, and I was blocked from the group. No explanation, no words, no anything. And even getting in there and trying to share, it's a hostile world. Yes. But I'm going to say this, that people that are in those struggling categories would say the exact same thing. We've been pushed and pushed and pushed. If we look at the entire church narrative of how we have handled different issues, of how LGBT people have felt over the years, of how different groups have felt over the years, it's not unreasonable to go, wow, that they're saying the exact same thing. We were pushed so far that now we're fighting back. And that's where we are. So I think that the better thing to do is go, okay, we on the conservative side recognize the pain that some of our less enlightened and inspired statements have made, and we want to minister to that. Then maybe
can you
we
point
can hope
to me
that more
to somebody who's doing that? Can you point me towards somebody?
I said on the church side?
No, on the anti-Mormon side.
I'm asking for someone on the LDS side. They started the Mormons and Gay website, but they
always ask the Orthodox side to be nice. We never ever do we get through the progressive or ex-Mormon side any kind of sympathy or kindness ever.
Hey, I don't know where I fall because I'm a big mess and I'm not on either side.
So we all are.
But
that's where we're
at least call yourself a hot mess. Let's go back to the hot mom motif, okay? Not the big mom motif. Let's stick with the hot mom motif and say I'm a hot mess. You know what I'm saying?
I'm a mild mess. Okay. but what I'm saying is I'm trying to do that, and I'm not in the community enough to know who's doing it, but I feel like Patrick Mason is one who's trying to do that, and Jacob Hansen went after him and posted a video about him and how there's not room for him in the church.
Do you know who might be good? Leo Winiger in the Uplift community of faith might be a good person to look at who's doing this.
Ben Shalati, I think, is one that's trying to.
Okay, so we've already named 4 active Mormons that have bent over backwards and who are probably wholly decent human beings in every way. Can you name me one on the progressive Mormon or anti-Mormon side that has taken the same measures that Leo Winiger has towards building bridges?
I unfortunately don't know Leo Winiger, but I would say that all of the people I named are actually more on the progressive Mormon side and are trying to reach out to the Mormon side, asking for a little more compassion and a little more space. They, I think, are on the
no.
So what about what about the 3 husbands in my ward that say, hold on a second?
We're saying that they have to tell their side to be compassionate. That's what we're saying. If it's our job to police the Orthodox side and say, be more understanding, when will the liberal side tell the liberal members to be more understanding of the Orthodox side? I've never seen it once, and they're not going to do it. Like they fundamentally want a different church.
Okay, and I am trying. That's what I'm trying very hard to do. I'm trying to say, hey, if you say there, I have people in my family who they have family members who say, if you're a member of the church, you can't be in my circle because I'm I'm gay and you hate, right? I dislike that, but let's recognize how long it's been. If you are gay, you can't be in our family anymore, right? There's been a lot of pain and a lot of history. And the thing I struggle with what you're saying, Kwaiko, is that well, they have to do it first. We're not going to be Christ-like until they're Christ-like. We're not going to be Christ-like if they're not Christ-like.
No, he's saying we already have.
So let's keep doing it. What Jacob Hansen is not doing that. It's doing the exact opposite.
Okay, now hold on. I need to address this Jacob Hansen because there's one flaw in your reasoning that I think as a mother you can appreciate. One of the number one things that I learned when I was doing all this family counseling that my family had to go through once upon a time was the number one rule he taught the family counselor was do not assign dirty motives. Now you'll notice in this whole entire conversation, I have never assigned Julie Hanks the motive of trying to lead people out of the church. I've said I doubt she is stupid. I've said these are the consequences I see of her actions, and I would appreciate clarity on what her intentions are, but I've never assigned her dirty motives. Mm-hmm. In this conversation, you have assigned Jacob Hansen the dirty motives of being a bully on the debate team, the dirty motives of saying there's no
motives.
room.
That's not a motive.
It's a bad characterization as well.
It's okay. His motive is
I did question one of his motives, saying if he's trying to do it to get a bigger following, to get more relevance. Okay. But I said that,
or whether he's trying to.
But I can't accuse him of that.
Okay, you said many times that he's telling people there's no place for them in the church. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that is a supposition that you have of his motives to tell people there's no. I don't think
that's the motive. I think I'm saying what he is saying.
Okay.
I'm not. There's a difference between a motive and an action.
This is all I'm saying. If we are in the business of trying to build the kingdom and build bridges between two disparate groups, there's two sides to a bridge. We can go more than halfway there. But ultimately, until the other side, if I'm trying to build a bridge between Baja California and Mexico, if the Mexicans won't let me land on the other side and don't want the bridge there, then I can't build that bridge. It is a two-sided endeavor. And just like Kwaku says, who are the people that are policing the opposite side? And the reason why this is even a conversation topic I'm engaging in with you is because I view Julie Hanks as having a massive opportunity to step up and be that bridge builder. Mm-hmm. But she is not. She has hundreds of thousands of followers. I'm almost done. She has hundreds of thousands of followers. And of all of the women that are popular on Instagram right now, she could bind the wounds of hundreds of thousands of people if she decided to take a two-part of the bridge approach. But it seems like the low-hanging fruit is a little bit too tasty, and the easy money or merch or whatever, I don't want to give her dirty motives, but whatever the other motive is outside of bridge building seems too tasty that I know she's smart enough to see that it's there. And if she's not taking it, I would like clarity as to why.
I want to say something about that. I feel like she may not see her position as a bridge building position yet. She might be in a position where she's still looking at these people that she thinks are hurting and are in pain, and she's just being a help to them. She hasn't turned around to see the bridge is being built right now, if that makes sense.
I think she's a Rorschach test. Michelle Stone is imposing her goodness as a mother of LGBTQ student, not students, but kids are students sometimes, right? When you homeschool. I think that Julie Hanks is a massive Rorschach test. And the reason why I haven't been willing to pass judgment yet is because I've noticed that oftentimes what people think of her is exactly what they are. So I'm not going to say what her motives are and pass judgment. I will ask her for clarity and tell her the power that she has.
Yes.
And hope that she chooses to use it correctly.
And that's what I want to say is, like, Michelle, I really appreciate the way that you're saying we need to be more compassionate and understanding with one another. And I think the best way to do that is with effective communication. So I would say the best move forward from where we're at right now is for us to find a way to better understand Julie Hanks, whether she's able to come talk with us, whether she's able to talk with Jacob Hansen.
And Jacob Hansen. I think he deserves as much grace as Julie does.
Yeah. So I think that...
Which is your tough pill to swallow, Michelle. It's tough as rocks for me to swallow Julie Hanks when she's getting quoted to people that are losing their families. That's a tough pill for me to swallow. So it's going to have to be an equally tough pill for you to swallow if we're going to lead by example on this little podcast of ours. You know what I'm saying?
I've already reached out to Hayden Carroll and said I would come and talk to them. I'm not Julie Hanks, but I'll come and talk to them and try to work through this. But I want to say something about the bridge building thing. And this is delicate because like, please don't jump off and misunderstand what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. But if people are feeling hurt or abused, if you have a situation, I'm not calling this abuse. I'm just going to use an abuse situation to make a point. Okay. So don't misunderstand. If you have a situation where there is an abuser and like, let's say a daughter who was abused by a father or something like that. And you have a situation where, say, the mom is trying to say, oh, well, just understand and forgive him and trying to build a bridge when that person is feeling hurt. That does more damage. I think that maybe Julie Hanks isn't seeing that in her role. I liked I think that if she is seeing herself as a minister trying to bind up wounds and there are active bombs coming in that are causing more wounds, at least from their perspective, if she were to, in that point, go, well, understand what he was trying to say, then she would be doing that same enabling thing that she's probably not wanting to do. So I think that
I just want to point out what you're saying here, though.
Well, let me just finish really quickly. Just that I think it's not fair to say you're not allowed to do what you're doing because we want you to do something else, right? So
fair enough. Brad?
Go ahead, Bradley. Sorry.
It's fine.
No, just hit it.
No, I think it's too easy for people to turn things into bombs that aren't. And to just make it more, because then they're more needed, you know?
So can I respond to that?
I mean, go for it. I just, yeah.
This is how I helped one of my, so I've worked with a lot of people who have kids that are not fitting in or whatever it is. And I helped someone understand, like, if you have a situation where, say, someone was wearing a jacket that you made for them and you didn't know that the whole inside of it was filled with sandpaper, and they've been in pain and in pain and in pain. And when they finally say, hey, this hurts, and you look at it and all the skin is rubbed off their arm, right? So it's rubbed raw because they've been in so much pain. And when they finally tell you that, say, if it's all rubbed off, every time you touch it, it's going to be excruciating. If you touch healthy skin, it doesn't hurt at all. But if you touch an open, raw wound, it's going to be excruciating. And you have to recognize that. And when people say that hurts, and you say, no, that doesn't hurt, that shouldn't hurt, that is the opposite of what ministering is.
But a lot of what's happening...
I think we can say that it shouldn't be bombs. Okay. I think it'd be better to go, why does that hit you that way? I'm listening. I'm not trying to talk over you.
No, I don't know, Michelle. When I hear you characterize the church itself as the abuser in this situation with people who are hurting, that's really difficult for me, because what ends up happening is people say it's the doctrines of the church, and rather than people who are not living the doctrines of the church, they mischaracterize that as what's actually the problem, when that's not the case. Right. And then we end up misdiagnosing things in a way that screws up. All the people who are feeling hurt aren't able to access the atonement and actually be healed. We say, yeah, you're hurting, and let's keep on hurting and hurting and hurting and hurting, because we're never going to access the atonement, and we're never actually going to take the power that the atonement can have to heal you in your life and your relationships and everything, because we are so stuck on the pain itself that we can't look for the solution. You know?
Okay. So I need to clarify the distinction between, I'm not comfortable saying the church, because that's a big mess. The doctrines of the church, I'm talking about specific things that are said by specific people, and church leaders have a huge platform and a huge amount of power, right? So I'm thinking, here's just a couple of examples. I have a very close friend who left the church, and then she started to feel like, oh, I kind of miss it, and turned on conferences with several years ago, just in time to hear Elder Perry give a talk and say something about their so-called families. This is just an example that comes to mind. That was a statement that was made. I know that he wasn't trying to be, and it was, years ago, but that was her last. She was like, why did I think I could work this out again. Or I look at several talks that have been given that talk about, it's not just LGBT. There are so many more things, but the talks that talk about LGBT people instead of to them. So what you end up with is you have all of the people that are comfortably on the boat, right? That are being told about the people who are hanging on the side, being dragged under, gulping for air, trying desperately to hold on. And you're telling the people in the boat, like, yeah, we're going to talk about them. And it shoves their head under the water. I wish that we had handled it differently for years. I wish that we had talked to gay people and told people how to love them and minister to them instead of treating them as the other. So there have been a lot of things said for years that have been extremely painful, but we can't see it if we're comfortably in the boat because we're not over on the side gulping for air, knowing how much that hurts.
But hold on, Michelle. I wholeheartedly understand that if there were a comfortable group inside of a boat with others hanging on, gulping for air, that they should be assisted. That is the essence of all the paintings of Jesus Christ. He reached in the water when even Simon Peter, one of the most faithful, didn't have enough faith and was drowning and said, "O ye of little faith," and pulled him out. We are called in our baptismal covenants to mourn with those that mourn and to, assist those who are in need of assistance. There's not a single person in this studio right here that does not believe that. I think the frustration is that you seem to think that this is a one-way street, that this boat is just full of Orthodox members who just don't have any problems and just don't recognize that you give an example of skin that is rubbed raw. Yet, do you not see the skin that is rubbed raw of the thousands of members that have been misclassified as white Christian nationalists, white supremacists, homophobes, bigoted? You're not an advocate for gays or an ally unless you believe what X, Y, or Z soundbite John DeLynn or Julie Hanks or whatever repeated this week. How come you can't give that same grace of needing to recognize that people have an arm with a jacket full of sandpaper that's rubbed raw? What is the responsibility of the LGBTQ lobby for, in my opinion, the abuse that it has waged on the Christian community very successfully the past 10 years? You could fire a white Christian man tomorrow from any job in the United States of America and not even have to give cause. And that man would go home, tell his wife, "Sorry, I lost my job. There's nothing I can do." You could never do that to a gay man, a transgender man, anybody that just self-declares as LGBTQ, because there's no real definition for it that all of us can agree on. It's just whatever that person says. How come you cannot recognize the sandpaper jacket that has been placed on the Christian community and that cross to bear, yet you can demand it for yours? That seems hypocritical.
Can I respond, please?
Yes.
So first of all, you're accusing me, this is a hard thing for me to hear because you're accusing me of things that are not true at all. Both of my sons have been victims of what I would consider trans activism and trans students in their college experiences. I have a son who just played Macbeth and had to fight his tail off to get that role because the white male professor was determined to cast it as an all-female show with lesbian couples because he needed to give women more opportunities, even though, and so, and I'm like, then you step down and let a woman take your role. Don't take away opportunities from a young man who doesn't have opportunities. You are not like Hardin. I promise you are preaching to the choir. You don't have to tell me how bad this is, right?
Okay.
Here's the thing. I don't have power there. I say this all the time. I've been kicked out of 2 feminist Mormon Facebook groups. I've been kicked out of the LGBT parents Facebook group. I'm doing the best I can. What makes me nervous about what I hear you say is it sounds to me like we, as the self-proclaimed disciples of Jesus Christ in the kingdom of God, shouldn't have to have the responsibility to keep our baptismal covenants and follow the example of Christ because they're not. And believe me, I feel like I've been the victim of everything you're talking about. I'm raising kids. I know, I get it. But when I see my side, I don't know what side I'm on. I'm trying the best I can on either side. So believe me, like I am trying to talk to that side as well. I'm trying to talk to both sides about, let's not exclude. Let's not say you condone this, you condone this. Let's try to not devastate and break up families and communities and marriages and relationships. Let's try to get into a different energy. And the best I can do is bring that to the opportunities that I have. And that's what I'm trying to do. I promise you, I am not one-sided at all in this.
Okay, yeah. And if there's anybody that's taking flack from both sides, it's you. So I'm not
a hot mess, remember?
Yeah, she's learning.
And
awesome.
I just want to say, that I think is the right way to be trying to do it. I just get frustrated when people end up throwing out the gospel along with the issue, right? And so that's I appreciate you. You're clarifying what you're saying.
That when we make it so hard to stay, we lose people that we love. We lose people that we need. That's why this matters so much. We've got to make it not so hard and not so painful to stay.
And so I'm curious, what do you think will make it less painful for people to stay?
I think that the less accusing we do, the less that we teach people to accuse members. Like my daughter's last time going to church was right after a conference when I had invited my daughter to come sit and listen with me. And it was an Elder Oaks talk that she was in tears and had to go to work. I was in tears that I asked her to come sit and listen to conference with me. She came to church with me the next week, and there were 2 testimonies in a row talking about how much they loved the things that were said in that talk, calling out the, like basically standing up against evil. And here's my daughter, and she never went to church again. And, and I'm not going to argue with her about that. I wish that the message here, I'll give you an example. During the whole COVID thing, my desperate desire was that the leaders were saying, hey, love one another, accept one another. Everyone's in a different place in this, but the message is unity, charity, Christ-like love, compassion. Let's try to make room for one another. Instead, they very much took a side that really was incredibly hurtful to me in the situation I was in, a traumatized mom who was massively traumatized by masks with my experience in the hospital. And I never could wear a mask and never will. The church leaders' approach to that hurt me badly and separated me from my community and pushed judgment at me, right? So I think there are things that we need to, and it's not in my power to tell the church leaders what to do, but all I can do is try to bind up wounds and hope that at some point they start to, hope that they start to see a little sooner before the damage is done.
Okay. First off, received. You are validated. I wholeheartedly agree with you that we have that responsibility to try, and we're morally obligated to try and put ourselves in other people's shoes before acting that out. I, for one, fail miserably sometimes, but believe it or not, I do try, and I should try harder. And I think everybody else that's sitting in the studio probably feels the exact same way. Okay. At the same time, I have a suspicion, and this is just a suspicion. I've noticed there's a life cycle that happens with good-hearted people that begin to engage in the Mormon conversation. They see guys like Jacob Hansen or Cardin Ellis or Quaker or Brad Whitbeck or whatever. They see him at what they feel is taking too hard of a critical and a hardline approach. Or those guys just wouldn't say it the way I did. They need to be soft. There's this big mess and there's all this hurt in the world. And there's some bad actors out there and these guys taking a hard line over there. There's just a lot of bad information. And if I could start a podcast or I could start a blog or we could get a conversation going, I bet you all of this hurt is just off of misunderstanding. So I'm going to dive right in. That's step 1. And they start a blog, they start a podcast. You started your podcast, which is great. Okay. Step 2 is they begin engagement with that other side, with the anti-Mormon side. And in their desire, because they are good-hearted people, to make inroads and build bridges, they start with what they see as putting their best foot forward and saying, here, look, this is what our side of the argument's mistakes have been. And they start seeding all of this ground and they admit to all of these bad things the church may have done or the Orthodox members may have done or Jacob Hansen or Hayden Carroll or whoever did, right? And then the anti-Mormons, they eat it up and they love it. But then they get burned. They get burned by somebody on that anti-Mormon side. that takes advantage of their willingness to cede that ground. But then the good person in their good heart says, no, that was just one bad actor. And all good systems, like any good system, there's always a couple of bad apples. So I'm going to give that person grace, right? And they keep going until finally they get burned by 3 or 4. It gets really bad and they come full circle and realize, holy crap, Jacob Hansen was right. There actually are bad actors out there who simply want to take the low-hanging fruit, manipulate it, and twist it like Brad fears in order to get people out of the church. And whatever sympathies they can garner from good people like Michelle Stone, good people like Jennifer, whoever, good people like Brad Whitbeck, whatever inroads they can make and whatever they can grab, like that greedy kid that's taking it out of the please take one only Halloween jar, you know what I'm saying? They get as much as they can while they can, until they go.
So are you talking about the camel in the tent? Like, let me put my nose in, then put my head in, and pretty soon the camel's in the tent and you're out. Are you saying that like it's a, well, I guess you're talking about
I'm saying there's a life cycle. I feel like you are still in step number 2, where you've been burned by a couple of people and you're realizing, yeah, there is a little bit more to this argument than possible. But as you dive in deeper and engage with more of these people, I think you'll start sounding a lot more like Kwaku when he says, can you show me somebody? If we have to police the Orthodox side to say, let's build this bridge and let's all live together, I can name 5 people that are active members of the church that are policing active members of the church saying you need to be more understanding. Can you name me one on the anti-Mormon side that is policing the anti-Mormon side saying, please be more understanding?
Okay, so a couple of things. I'm not engaged in the communities. I couldn't name on either side very well. So that's not a fair test. I do know, like there's a lady who, well, I don't know what names I should say, but I do know people who are on the very much struggling or what you would call pragmo side who are working very hard to make sure that there is a sensitive, understanding tone and that people feel comfortable staying in the church. I have seen that happen a lot. But I guess what I'm confused by in what you're saying, like, did you hear me say that I have been kicked out of multiple Facebook groups and I have taken as much, I have taken.
Yes, I misspoke. I meant to say step 3. I apologize.
I have
You're
taken
right.
an immense amount of from both sides. I have both sides coming after me all the time. I hear what you're saying. I will say this. I will never agree with Jacob Hansen because I've gone through the scriptures. Let me tell you one thing. Can I read a quote?
Hit it.
Well, go ahead. Did you have something else to say?
No, I was just laughing.
No, go ahead. I want to hear the quote.
Okay, let me see if I can find it. They talk about, so he uses the example of church leaders as brain surgeons. Have you guys watched his video? Yeah. And he's like the 12 greatest brain surgeons. If you disagree with it.
Oh, that one. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And it's just bizarre. So they, so Julie says something about that she, in their calling as special witnesses of Jesus Christ, she has never disagreed with them. She sometimes thinks that they speak beyond that where she disagrees with them. And for me, I completely disagree with like when they said that masks are a sign of your Christ-like love and that
they said that?
I don't know what words we can say are
that was a
literal miracle given from God in response to our fasting and prayers, those kinds of things. And there are a lot of other things that have been said that I find to be opposite of the truth, right? So I have the same stance. And so anyway, so then they quote Elder Eyring that it's a little bit hard, but let me get to this. He says, dude, okay, let me just pause because I want to freak out for a second here. It's like she is just like, well, it's like their only job is to testify of Christ. Like, it's like this super narrow thing. It's like, as long as they're just up there saying like Jesus Christ lives, it's really like, really? Like, that's all they're supposed to do? Like, that's what you're going with here? That the stewardship they've been given as a prophet of God is just to testify of Jesus Christ? Like, that's it? And I think that right there encapsulates the problem with their perspective of the gospel. They are so works-based. They are so accusation that the idea that testifying of Jesus Christ is this tiny little narrow thing that's all they're supposed to do. That's how small, and from what I hear, that the Savior is in their version of the gospel. Where for me, to testify of Jesus Christ, to have come into his presence to be able to help other people understand that process, to like for them, it is works, accusation. You have to be on the same page. You have to do all of this. And to me, it's all about Jesus Christ. And the more we understand of who the Savior really is and the example he truly sets, the more room there is for everybody.
So I just want to say to that particular thing, when I listened to him say that, I think I understood him a little bit differently than you did. And maybe when you go and talk with them, you'll be able to get to a closer understanding of where he's coming from. I think that his exasperation at that was feeling like Julie Hanks in the way that she talked about they're only supposed to talk about, they're testify of Jesus Christ. They're not supposed to help us understand the rest of the commandments, was kind of how he took it, right? So in his mind, testifying of Jesus Christ includes helping us understand his commandments and live like him, right? So I think you're actually a lot more on the same page with Jacob than you might think. And language is really difficult to get past sometimes, especially when it's emotionally charged. So I think you'll find that you guys are actually much more similar in the end when you talk to them. And this is the hard part of figuring this out. This is why I want to talk to Julie Hanks too and get her side of the story and understand, look, what is her goal? You know, because we can look at what she's said and cut it up.
I haven't had luck. Yeah, I haven't made inroads.
But we can like cut it up ourselves and think, oh, this is what I think she's saying. But until she tells us herself, and even if she tells us herself, we still might not completely understand it. Because, I mean, Joseph Smith talked about how language was a prison. And it's so difficult for us to understand one another. So I guess, I don't know. It's just something we've got to maybe even pray more strongly about, to be able to understand one another more effectively and to strive to mourn with those who mourn. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll tell you this. If I were to choose a ward, I would a million times rather be in a ward where Julie Hanks or someone with her perspective were the leadership than if someone like Jacob Hansen were the leadership. And I'm pretty neutral in this battle. I'm very, like I said, I'm extremely conservative, but I'm also all about the Savior. And so I would struggle in either one in certain ways, but I fear that this approach to the gospel that is so accusing and so saying you have to be like this if you want to be in the church, that is something that I cannot get behind, and it really terrifies me and upsets. It's hard to take.
I hear you, Michelle, and I, as someone who comes from a very liberal background, I don't always agree with Jacob Hansen. In fact, we'd probably disagree on a lot of things. But people like him are, if there were more people like him, when I and others were being chased off of campus by the liberal mob at BYU, having our lives ruined, getting fired from our jobs, having to drop out for a semester or two because we were the top trending thing on Twitter 3 times in Utah, having our addresses leaked and having people show up, things like that. If we had more Jacob Hansens...
I'm so sorry. I haven't known, and I haven't been aware of anything. So
no, you don't know my personal story. It's okay. But like literally, like there was like a month and a half period. Every time I saw a rainbow flag, I was like, block. Like I literally would block anyone with a rainbow flag on Twitter because every single you're a piece of S, Kwaku, KYS, Kwaku, all these people always had pronouns or rainbow flags in their bio. And so like I literally, if I got followed by a rainbow flag, I would block them. Like people,
you were
like
traumatized.
I wish there were more Jacob Hansens. I would have loved to be in an award with 100 Jacob Hansens because at least those were the people that were trying to fight on my behalf from the mob. So I get this is just flipped. Like people have different experiences, but like coming from the black guy from the South whose freaking parents campaigned for Obama, who is the head of BYU Democrats, who is freaking Arab and black for Pete's sake and did musicals in San Francisco. Okay, I have seen both the sides. I can just say there is a lot of hurt and pain on the Orthodox side that goes unrecognized and ignored. And we're only going to get more Jacob Hansens because we've already given the Richard Oslers and all the people that come from the Orthodox side.
Well, because he's an advocate. He's the only one that's actually giving advocacy for the beleaguered and embattled Orthodox members.
Carden, can you tell the story about the elementary schooler? It was either in your ward or in your stake who had who saw the rainbow flag on a backpack and said that's the bully flag.
Oh yeah, like heartbreaking story, literally heartbreaking story. Little kid. I don't even want to give the age. You know what I'm saying? Because people might be able to figure it out. We're walking along. Sees the new patch, the one with a little triangle on the side and everything like that, and says, yeah, that's the bully flag. All the bullies at school have that. You know what I'm saying? Out of the mouth of babes. And I tell you right now, for FM 98.1, Problem Solver Politics, and a bunch of other radio shows, I covered every single one of those riots throughout 2019 to 2021. And I've never helped a shopkeeper clean up broken glass and bricks that were thrown through his window that weren't tossed by somebody that had an LGBTQ flag in their midst. And I get there's false flag arguments, and I get they're not responsible for how people use their flags. And there's just as much hurt behind the Gadsden flag or the Confederate flag or whatever. But I'm just saying, if we want to talk about compassion, it needs to be a wholly two-sided affair. But I don't see it being a two-sided affair. And ironically, the people that we're getting angry at are engaged in the exact same thing that Julie Hanks is saying she's engaged in, which is advocacy for the embattled and the beleaguered. So I'm willing to give grace here. My stake president hates me. The guy can't stand me. You know what I'm saying? I did not buy a house in a certain side of a street when we were house shopping because I didn't want to be in the guy's ward when he was bishop. He kicked me out of being, well, didn't kick me out, but he advocated for my release of being a volunteer seminary teacher, all this stuff. And it's just personality. Like, I recognize he cannot stand me because I am loud and I am proud, and he wants docile and by the book. Okay. I committed no sin. He just hates my personality. And guess what? I hate his. And the fact in a conversation, I called him a Sadducee. That probably didn't help either. All right. But at least I recognize that's a personality issue. Okay. I think with you, your arguments about needing compassion are great, but I think your Jacob Hansen issue is more a personality issue than it is a doctrinal issue. And I give room for that. I think it's wholly okay to not be able to stand somebody in your ward or your church, and you can still go and sit down in the pews together. In fact, it's one of the reasons why I think this church is true and God is wise, because he forces us to have wards that are divided by geographies. And despite the fact that I don't like that guy, every Sunday I go to church thinking I might bump into that dude's butt. Now, I can't stand that guy, but God is more important. And me lifting where I stand is more important. So I'll frickin' grin and I'll frickin' bear it. And that is good practice for the difficult things and the difficult personalities that come along in life, such as insert name of person you don't like here.
Okay, let me just respond to something you were talking about, because you keep bringing up the extremes on the bullying side and everything. And I want to be careful to not give the most extreme the most attention, because there are a lot of people in the middle ground. There are so many wonderful, loving, inclusive members of the LGBT community who have infinite patience to just
then bring them on our show and let's highlight their voices.
Keep loving. I know a lot of people like that. And I would think that most people who engage in actual community do. I think that the more that people feel bombs launched at them, the more extreme they get, right? So we all need to be careful of that. And my desire is to say, hey, even if we're feeling bullied, and I would say that from my perspective, it's hard to claim that we're being, well, I mean, if we look at the history of the church and the experiences.
Move to California. You'll change your opinion.
The people that are not LGBT are not as uncomfortable in the church as the people who are. And we haven't yet received the revelation to really resolve this problem, however the Lord sees fit to do it. So I believe this is all given to us for an opportunity for all of us to learn. But I don't want to look only at the extremes and ignore all of the people that are there in the middle. Let's do our best to ignore the extremes as much as possible and just love all the people.
And okay. I think that's actually, I feel like things are wrapping up, but I think that's the core thing that we need to figure out as a group is how do we love one another more effectively? How do we keep those primary commandments to love God and to love our neighbor and to do so effectively? Because I think you're correct that something you said earlier, the fact that there are these people who are being hurt is evidence that something is wrong, you know? And so I think that if we were doing a better job and going out of our way more to love God and love our neighbor more effectively, we would be able to solve these arguments better. Okay, now the last thing I'll say before I go is I think that you're right, that if there is hurt, obviously somebody is doing something wrong, but I don't think that that's not always the church. Sometimes, no, I totally agree with you. I think there's a lot of bad actors out there that grift and purposely twist the words of people like Elder Holland when he says, I wish there was more musket fire, who's making an obvious, blatantly plain-faced obvious analogy to 19th century temple building. And then all of a sudden the Advocate, one of the largest periodicals for the LGBTQ lobby, says he's advocating for the physical violence and assassination of gay members. Those grifters need to be silenced and need to be with a full-throated rebuttal be put in their place. And we need to be very careful about how we use the term love, because I feel like it's in flux the way that people are approaching how it's defined. Because I completely agree with you that terms can be manipulated. I have to respond really quickly to what Carden said. Absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead. I absolutely agree with you that things are overstated and exaggerated and people are called out as worse than they are. And I think that for me, that like we can't use that caricature of what Elder Holland said as an excuse to ignore the things that were actually said that were actually hurtful. If you listen to people who were hurt by that talk and listen to them in a reasonable way, and you realize it's things like saying, we need to have sympathy and feel bad for the people who want to donate to BYU and aren't comfortable doing that anymore. That's an interesting thing to say. Have compassion for them when there are all of these people that are struggling so much, that are gay or whatever it may be, that are struggling at BYU, and there's no call for compassion for them necessarily. And when he says things like that the valedictorian, I can't remember what he said, but basically like took over the microphone when he was the valedictorian who was invited to speak and had his speech approved. There were things said that were genuinely hurtful. Michelle, the thing that he said, let's not look at the extremes, but let's still try to understand so we can do better. I went to high school with Matt Easton, the valedictorian that he was speaking about. And it's a very touchy subject because of the way that it got portrayed. He very specifically was speaking about the administrator who approved the talk. He wasn't talking about Matt Easton. I think that got blown out of proportion in a way. That's not how I understood it, because he accused him of like... Go back and look at the exact words he said. It was very clear. Read the transcripts. It's pretty obvious. That it was directed to the administrator. This is a talk that was being given to the school. This was... It's very clear that it was to the administrator. And like... Maybe he, like you were saying, maybe he would have worded that differently, knowing that people... Again, a wish for a do-over. Yeah, knowing that people would have, I think, twisted his words in the way that they have after. Because I don't think Matt was necessarily going out of his way looking to be offended, but other people told him, hey, you're getting attacked by an apostle right now, right? And so it's hard not to respond to that. I don't know that it was just Matt that was offended. I think it was... I'm talking about bad actors. When I saw his posts online, right? And he's like, I'm getting attacked. All of that hurt was caused by bad actors on social media that profit off the monetization of their social media profiles, such as John DeLynn, who are the ones that instigate and say those things and tell the Matt Eastons of this world that they should be offended and then come on their podcast so they can make money off the clicks and the views. And the whole original point of this podcast was you calling out Jacob Hansen for his treatment of Julie Hanks, when he's simply, in my opinion, saying, hey,
I question whether or not Julie Hanks is becoming one of those bad actors. So,
okay, so I know we have to wrap up, but really quickly, I have to say, I don't think it's fair to say that hurt or offense only happens because people tell us we should, because I have sat through enough general conferences and been deeply hurt to know that that's not true. I think that that's kind of
saying in 2021,
that's undermining.
I think in 2021,
I'm not talking about just 2021. I'm talking about
I'll say in the past
years.
decade, I would say 90% of the arguments and sound bites against Orthodox members of the church and priesthood leaders have been twisted by activists in order to be something they're not. The policy of exclusion included.
Okay, that's fine. I'm telling you that my experience is that I haven't been terribly involved. It has been sitting there listening to things or quotes that were sent out by my leadership that I happened to see that it were extremely difficult and painful for me. So, okay.
You're in step 3, Michelle.
And you've been there.
You've been there for a while. And you are embattled. And by the way, I'm not here to say you're wrong. I'm here to say you're totally validated.
I also want to I want to clarify that I wasn't intending to call out Jacob Hansen for his treatment of Julie Hanks.
See, I was hoping you were, and I'm going to edit out any of these nice things you're going to say about him later and make a super cut and label it literally Michelle Stone takes down Jacob Hansen.
With logic and facts.
With logic and
facts.
What
I want to say is I do want to call out this approach, this perspective, this accusing, unchristlike, no room for Jesus and no room for you in this church perspective, because that is what I think causes people to leave the church
and
far
honestly,
more than advocacy in other ways.
And when you approach it that way, as you talk with him and Hayden, that's the kind of thing that gives us the proverb that iron sharpens iron, right? Ooh. You will help him be a more effective tool in the hands of God to help defend people, because I think you guys share that goal. To help defend people's souls and help them come to know God better. I think you're both trying to do that.
See, look at you being a bridge builder. See, I'm different. I'm like, you're right, Michelle. He is being a jerk. And you know what? Oh my gosh, let's sit here and talk for 10 minutes about it. You know what I'm saying?
No, but
you're validated, girl.
And I just want to say thank you for taking the time and energy, especially after not sleeping well, to take the effort that it takes to have a conversation like this with us, to help us all, I think, be a little bit more careful in the way that we address our grievances with the church and with others and any pain that we're feeling. I think that the thing I agree with you most on is that we need to be focusing on being as Christ-like as possible as we do these things. And so I just want to end with that. Thank you for taking the time.
Yeah. So let us know where we go wrong. You can start with me. I'll follow my sword first. I'm an easy target. Big jerk, Cardin. You know what I'm saying? I'll lead by example. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. If you made it this far, you deserve a medal. This is Midnight Mormons, or Midnight Strike Through Mormons. We'll see you in the next program. Hey guys, Cardinellis here. Thanks for watching the video. Now, before we go on to the next video, we gotta talk. We've got a ton of subscribers for which we are very grateful, but unfortunately, I'm going over the analytics and less than 15% of you guys have clicked on the bell icon next to the subscribe button. Now, besides being subscribed to this channel, you need to click that bell icon so you get alerted to every video we drop. We're making about 3 videos a week, dropping them once every other day, and you're not gonna see all of them unless you've clicked on that bell icon. So please make sure you like and you share and you subscribe and you also click on the bell icon. See you guys in the next program.